NRL Fantasy Team List Tuesday, and it's the first of the major buy rounds, guys. So, very tricky one. A couple of good options this week. Some really fun pods we can tear into today as well. But for me, it's really about getting that starting 13 going. So, can you fill that starting 13 and target your trades towards the positions you need there? So, only the starting 13 positions count. Your bench doesn't count. Your interchanges don't count. It's only that starting 13 for this week and for next week. Really nailing that in because I want to make sure everyone's across that. That's the big thing there. Now, Monty, how you feeling for this week?
Yeah, not too bad. Had a great week last week. Crawled back into the top 2,000, but this week, the Origin news and this team list, there are a couple surprises here, so I'm keen to get into it.
Okay, let's tear right on in. Just going to move my run around so I can look at you a bit more straightly.
Go.
But yeah, let's turn to these team lists. So, what we do quickly, give me a kiss, Longy. How you going? G'day, Loza. Great week, Nathan. Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's some problems. So good to see you, kind from our Discord there as well. What have we got? We got a lot of hype coming through. Let's go. Trbojevic robbed. Yeah, crazy that he's not in our Origin, but he gets to be the captain of our fantasy sides for this period. So that's pretty sweet. Adam O'Brien is clueless. Daly is blown. A lot of criticism, and Longy, pass on your knowledge. Let's get into it. I will just shout out to Ulu. Got banned from Trbojevic stream. That's brutal.
Ooh.
That's brutal, mate. Yeah. Well, you must have asked too many questions there, I guess. And hello from the Fiji Islands, man. I'd like to be in the Fiji Islands right
Sounds
now
nice.
too. Greg, hit me up if you got some space there. I'd love to come and do some scuba diving. So, and Monkey, yeah, shout out to that too. We'll show through those as well, but new upgrades to the Discord there. Now, team list here. Let's get into it. We don't have as many teams today, so we're going to be sort of going into a bit of detail on each of these teams, talk about the pod options. We're going to talk about captains quite a bit today as well, because your captain isn't going to be playing, right? Your usual Terrell, May, Paynas, Nate Cleary out there. So a pod captain is in order. Now, for the Dogs first, we've got Connor Tracy at fullback, Wilson, Zeri, Blake, Taff, and Montoya in the back line. We then go to Matt Burton, Toby Sexton in the halves. Hopoi gets his start in the prop spot. Reed Marnie, Josh Curran in the prop spot as well, which is interesting there. I thought he might have taken an edge spot there. Then kick out Hayes, Hayward at lock, and Turpin, Morin, Hughes, and Luke Smith on the bench there. Extended bench, Hutch, Sewer, Underhill. Yeah, okay. So no Kurt Mann in this team. He's going to be out there. That means Hayward is in for a pretty big role this week. Turpin is a bench hooker, so it's not great news if you're a Reed Marnie person. Turpin might play that, bench middle forward role. I'm just thinking like they don't mind a guy who just tackles and ball plays. So he might play that sort of Kurt Mann, Jamin Salmon kind of role there. So Marnie might still play 80 minutes, but it is a bit dicey. If you jump up to the back line here, though, Connor Tracy, Wilson, Wilson's getting that fill in for Jacob Carraz there. It's a 4 to 6 week period. Wilson, I'm just trying to think of his price. He's in that 300s area from memory. Maybe if you check that one out there, but he is going to get a pretty extended period of time in the team. The issue here is that Dogs are very under strength for this game, so I'm not necessarily picking them as a big winner, right? So the winger in the team, I just don't see huge attacking stats on offer for him in this one.
Yeah, so he's priced at 347K. So
not good enough.
Just the wing fullback. If he had the dual, potentially, but yeah, just the wing fullback for him.
No, not good enough. And Dogs don't play next week either. Either did the Dolphins. So, yeah, it won't be enough there. Matty Burton is a fun one. And we looked at him before. He's in sort of that mid-500s area for price. So, priced at a 40. His break-even is pretty low as well. I think it's 39 there. So, for Matty Burton, got back the major kicking role last week, goal kicking last week. Look, a lot of teams are going to have Savala as their second half. Would you consider going for a Burton buy if you had Savala and maybe you had a full team already?
I would potentially look at that. I've done that myself. Like last week, I grabbed Katoa. So I made sure I had the two gun halves for this week because we saw Savala last week. I think it was 22, 21, I think.
I think it bumped up to 27.
27. Well, there you go. But yeah, it's just I wouldn't be comfortable with Savala in my team unless we know Savala can score 50 or he can score 20. So if you're looking for a sneaky pod, Burton could be that guy.
Yeah, Burton plays all three major buy rounds as well. So that's a booster. For your team there, by the way, I just will shout out one thing. Hines?
No, Fogarty and Katoa, they're my two.
I was going to say, if you've got Hines and Katoa, they both miss next week, right? So you'd be in a scenario where you'd have Nathan Cleary and Zavala potentially next
Yep.
week, and then you're creating the problem next week that you had this week.
Yeah.
Cleary might not back up. Like my team, for example, I'm running Cleary and Munster most likely next
Yeah.
week. Zavala is back up there. You know, maybe Fletcher Sharp can come up to that spot too.
Yeah.
Like I've got a bit of flexibility, but just because of all these other issues, I'm holding Munster now. And he's
Through
made
all this
60K
time.
in 2 weeks. Like, so I might as well just keep the good times rolling. But yeah, Matty Burton, guys, good option there. People asking about Jacob Kiraz, 4 to 6 weeks, a calf issue. That is a high recurrence injury. Yeah, good question there. Username is questionable, but high recurrence injury though for a calf. So usually calf, hamstring, injuries that can easily be redone. They're the ones that I'm sort of steering away from. So 4 to 6 weeks for Kiraz. He's a sell. He's done a great job for you. You nod your hat to him. It's bad timing, but Kiraz has absolutely crushed it and made you a bunch of cash there as well. So easy sell there. Liam, Lipoi Hopoi. So we were talking about Hopoi last week quite a bit. I was sort of there. Liam's there. Nice display picture, Liam. But I was talking about Hopoi a bit last week as someone who passed the eye test and came in his first game and made a dent every run he made and just sort of thought, oh, if the opportunity arose, I'd like him quite a bit. Don't hate him as a cash out. I like him a lot more than Daniel Saluka-Fifita. What's happened this week? He's got that starting spot. Admittedly, Saluka-Fifita is out injured. Max King is out with Origin. They got a few things at play here, but I think he could take this opportunity and really tear into it and be a value option. So, as Jack mentions there, great cash out option. Only an option, though, if you need a cash out and if you want that mid coverage through the major buy rounds. So the second point, everyone wants that mid coverage.
Yep.
But don't force it if you don't need it, right? Like he's not one you have to get in. But if you need a middle forward for this week and you'd rather go cheap and then upgrade your back line potentially with some options we're going to talk about, then I like it quite a bit. I like it quite a bit. Because if you had, let's say, I'm trying to think of an option. If you had Dylan Egan and Rob Toyer and you were trying to sell those two and you wanted to go to Herbie, then Hopboy could be the other side of that trade. And I actually like that as a duo, by the way. That is a trade example.
Right.
Like quite a bit. So Hopboy, I'm a fan of. I do think that Tupanua coming back soon. Sam Hughes is back soon as well. There's going to be some problems, and he's not going to be a week-to-week starter. But if Max King stays in the Origin side and Kurt Mann stays in the Origin side, then he's a good shot at maintaining some sort of minutes through this period and being a cover guy. So only if you need that cash out is he the option to go for. Now, let's keep rolling through this team here. Look, Reed, we talked about him. Josh Curran is one I'm getting asked about a lot. I like Curran, the player. I don't love Curran, the fantasy prospect. He's at that prop spot this week. He'll probably play pretty big minutes at prop, and I would pencil him in for a 60-point game here. So I think he goes well. The issue is that Tupanua comes back, Preston comes back, which moves Parry Hayes into the middle prop rotation there as well. And we get, all those other returnees too, Sam Hughes. The pressure gets put on Curran, and they don't typically like to play Curran for big minutes. So my view on Curran is we probably don't jump on him. It's just he's going to go well this week. I just sort of see the scores being a little bit disappointing through this period, though. And you're not getting a cheap price. He's above 600K. I mean, I'd probably go for Victor Radley before I went for Josh Curran. Just, a bit cheaper there. Very similar scoring profile. So that's how I see that one. Do you agree with that, or are you more of a Curran guy than I am?
I owned Curran a bit last year, and it's very up and down. Some really good scores followed by some mid-30 scores. But I feel like he's priced at a 46, which is where he's kind of averaging at prop. But I feel like you're better off spending an extra 50, 60K and grabbing the McInnes or even Fanua Blake even.
Yeah. Yep. Go up or go down.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Or down to the bottom. Hopoi.
Exactly. Yeah.
A few guys asked too about, would you start Hopoi this week? And I think, if you need a middle forward and you don't want to invest there, it's too late to get Jazz Tavanga. It's too late. He's 450K. And Gerbo's not in the Origin team, so there's no guarantee that Jazz is good for the rest of the period. I've got Jazz right now. I've made 100K, so I'm not upset, and he'll go well this week, but I'm not certain Jazz will be useful through the entire Origin period. So I wouldn't be targeting him as a buy option. Docker Clay is the best cheap target at hooker, and Hopoi is the best cheap target in the middle forward spot, unless you're going to, a top tier guy. So I'd say yes, start Hopoi this week, but just be conscious that he will lose minutes as they get back to full strength, unless he has a big game here, which I think he's capable of. So if he passes the eye test, I think he will evolve, but there's just a lot of pressure on minutes over there. For the rest of the team, I wouldn't be targeting. I I'm not a big kick-out believer. I think you're paying keeper price for a guy who's not a keeper. And I just view him as sort of 5 points worse than Ewan Aitken, who's going to be available next week. Plus additional injury risk compared to Aitken. I think Kickout's got a bit more of that in his game. Plus, when Preston comes back, when they get back to full strength, maybe Kickout loses some minutes. Like, he's not someone I'm targeting. But if you do like the pod and you back the attacking stats to continue, you can jump on. Are there any other questions here on the Dogs before you roll through?
Yes, we do. Not necessarily about who's playing, but for those who own Max King, would you look to move him on with this Origin selection?
If you need to. So we're going to do a video this week. It's going to be like tiers of sell, basically. So there's so many guys you could sell this week. But there's like tier 1 sells that are like, Dylan Egan, unfortunately, or, Jacob Kraz, like these types of players. And there's like tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, going down the list. Max King's probably like a tier 3 sell. So if it benefits your team and if you don't have the tier 1 sells to get rid of, you can sell him. But there's a big chance he doesn't make Origin 2, right? They've got a lot of pressure on that position. The Safidis should both be back. Yep. Terrell May's beating on the door, but doesn't look like he's going to get a spot. There's a bunch of guys that could take it. Gerber could come back as well, right? He's only out with AHIA. So if King misses Origin 2 and 3, he becomes instantly a buy again, which is enough for me to say, hey, if you can, try to hold him this week, watch Origin. If the Blues win, you could probably sell him next week.
Yeah.
If the Blues lose, his spot is not secure at all. It's not on him that it's not secure. It's just that if they lose a game, they'll bring back one of those other guys, I think. So I'd give him a week is my answer. But if you need to sell him, I'm okay with you selling him too.
And then I assume there hasn't been any questions, surprisingly, but Jacob Kraz, obviously 4 to 6 weeks, you'd move him on?
Yep, easy sell, tier 1. Now, Dolphins, Averillo at fullback. We've got Asako, Finai, Farmworth, Bostock. Then we got Nick Reamer and Katoa in the halves. Forward pack here is Molo, Donahue, Kafusi in the front row. Then we have Fenafuaki, Lemuelu, and Ray Stone at lock. Harrison Graham, Mark Nichols, Josh Kerr, and Oren Keeley on the bench there. And just quickly checking the extended bench here. Still no Maxi Plath. Yeah, Kenny Bromwich is there. Junior Tupou is there. I'm surprised Junior Tupou hasn't sort of pushed on that starting spot again over Finai, but that might happen at some point. It could still happen in the future. But yeah, for this Dolphins side here, first one I got to talk about. I want your Hito meter answer here. How hot are you on this one? Herbie Farmworth, captain, and tell me why.
Oh, I'm super hot on him. I mentioned it in our buy plenty video a couple weeks ago that this matchup just screams Herbie Farnworth.
Yep.
Crab runs, offload, tackle breaks, Mayo stats, the lot. And if he's coming up against Blake Taff, I think he's top 2 captain option this week. So I am all aboard the Herbie Captain Express.
Yeah,
all aboard.
I'm with you there. So what is that display picture? Eddie Guerrero with a bunch of babies. I'm going to switch it off that one. I'm with you there completely. Herbie Farmworth is probably the captain for this week. So we're going to talk about him. We'll talk about Aaron Clark a bit as well. Joey Tarpanay's around too. There's some other guys, but Isaiah Katoa, I think in the same matchup for the same reasons, is a solid captain option. So when you look at Katoa here, he's bumped out back-to-back 70-plus scores without attacking stats. Big chance of attacking stats in this game. Herbie Farmworth, 100-plus potential. The Dogs are tough, right? They're a tough side. Blake Taff, can he handle Herbie Farmworth? I don't think so. I don't think so at all. Really, you're like Taff's solid, but Herbie's Herbie.
I wouldn't be surprised if the Broncos do move Bronson Sherry over to switch sides just to contain Herbie. But by the looks of this team list, I think it's Blake Taff.
Yeah. Okay. Well. There we go. Herbie Farmworth. If you don't have Herbie Farmworth, by the way, probably a really good one to buy as well. So I had a look. He's in 40% of top sides, which is lower than I thought. As a Herbie owner, I'm happy about it. But if you don't have him, I'd probably be targeting him this week. Now, for the rest of the back line here, we talked about Isaiah Katoa. Look, Isaiah Katoa is a great option. His 70 back-to-back scores without attacking stats are a little bit inflated. So I think there's been about 5 forced turnovers in those games. That's worth about 10 points a week. So they're not going to happen every week. They're a little bit exceptional. So I would call it more like a 65 average across 2 weeks, with no attacking stats, which is pretty unbelievable still. But just moderating that one down a bit. But Isaiah Katoa, he's number 1 half in fantasy as of right now. And that factors in that Cleary misses a bunch of games with Origin, all that sort of thing. Isaiah Katoa, if I had to choose one half for this period of time, I would choose Isaiah Katoa. Now, saying that, I don't have Isaiah Katoa on my team. I've got Nico Hines in my team, who we'll talk about him in a sec. And I just don't know if I'm going to go and get Isaiah Katoa. I don't know if it's worth doing. I could potentially do it. Just he misses that round 13 game. I've got Hines already who misses that game. I'm going to think about it during the week. But if you don't have one of the big dog halves already, Isaiah Katoa is a great target for you. Forward pack here, nothing really to go into too deep. They've got a bunch of guys missing, right? So the Dolphins, you go through their middle forwards, right? It's Flegler out, Dan Safidi out, Jerry Marshall-King out, Max Plath out, now Tom Gilbert out. You've basically got the entire starting forward pack missing from this team, which is crazy. So the Dolphins playing as well as they have without their starting forward pack is pretty unbelievable. But the rest of these guys, not super interesting to me. Have we got any questions on the Dolphins?
We do, with Gilbert out he's requiring surgery on his pec, unfortunately. Would you consider Lemuelu at all?
Yeah, he's good. He's good. I worry a little bit about like Felice Kafusi playing minutes on the edge or other guys stepping into that role. They just don't seem to like playing Lemuelu big minutes, but I'm a big Lemuelu fan. So if you were desperate, you could. I just think like we've got Hosking there, who's still a must-have. We've got Aitken, who's a great option next week. I'm not desiring an edge forward that much right now, so I personally don't think you need him. But if you want to and you need an edge forward, then you can jump on.
And then final question for the Dolphins. Would Max Plath be someone to target when he returns?
He's not a must-have. He's got a big break-even. If he comes back in round 14 and we watch him play and he goes well, then round 15 buy option is possible. As a hooker, middle forward there. Doesn't play round 18. But yeah, he's a great option for round 15 if he plays round 14. Looks good, loses money. Yeah.
And then people are asking, is it worth picking up Katoa despite his bye next round, or would you wait until round 15?
Depends if you have enough halves next week. So have a look at your team. And if you have enough halves next week, buying Katoa, you're all good. But if you are left short on the halves spot next week, buying Katoa, then you're cooked. So it depends on your team there, but I think he's a great option to target right now. Also, next week, you only have your starting 13 playing. So it's pretty easy there. Now, let's keep going through these teams. We got a few to go through. Less this week, by the way, so we can take our time. But Eels and Seagulls up next. And this is a parasite missing some pretty important players here. So no Mitch Moses, no Zach Lomax, no, I guess you could talk about like Sean Lane, Bryce Cartwright, Joe Fangawi, these types of players who aren't in there anymore as well. Got no Bailey Simonson there too. Samrani comes into center. So actually, let's just tear into this team here. So we got Yongi at fullback. We go through to Russell, Panasini, Samrani, Adokar in the back line, Brown, Hawkins in the halves. Then we go to Jack Williams, Riley Smith, Junior Barlow in the front row. We go to Tuolangi, Kautonga, Halfgood in the back row. Then Walker, Moretti, Madison, and Dury on the bench. So for Parramatta here, a few things we could talk about. Look, Yongi is a hold at this stage. If you've got Yongi there, you probably put him in a loophole kind of position. If you have a few wing fullbacks, but if you only have him, then you're just going to start him. He'll score you something. I don't know what he'll score, but he'll score something. I would expect, I was forecasting it like a 28 is what I predict there. If you do want to upgrade, you could potentially upgrade there as well. But, he's startable this week. He is sellable at some point there. Now, for the rest of the back line here, I've seen a few questions come through, so I'll skim past this and we can sort of circle back to them because like Samrani, I'm happy to talk about. Dylan Brown, I think is fun to talk about as well. Adokar. Then for the forward pack, Riley Smith is there. There's a bit of chat going around, guys, and this is not concrete. Sometimes when I share these things, they come true. Sometimes they don't. Josh Papali'i is in the 18th jersey there. Lusick is in the 19th. I've heard a bit of word that Josh Papali'i will come onto the bench in this game. Not concrete, just a little bit of chat, and play a bit of hooker. So a little bit of a chance that Riley Smith loses some minutes this week. It would make sense with the fact that he went off last week limping with, I think it was a calf cramp, but you know how those things are, right? So just a bit of a chance that Riley Smith does lose some minutes this week. So if you're a Riley Smith owner, just be ready for any curveballs late. But I would say in most cases, you're still just going to start him. And if you cop a 40 instead of a 45 or, a 35 instead of a 45, you're starting him anyway. Like you just want to have your 13 this week and sort of minimize the amount of trades you're using. So just be ready for that on Riley Smith. In terms of the back row here, Kelma is not a buy. Please don't ask me about it. Kidione Kautonga, you can keep starting him. He's been playing like a keeper. He's not a guy to target as a buy, but if you have him in your team, after what he's done the last fortnight, you stick with him. The work rate's been fantastic. The offloads have increased. Like he's on fire. And then Jermaine Hopgood is just one that's, 48 minutes last week was a move in the right direction, but not enough in the right direction. So still not on my radar. I was sort of hoping we'd see that lift up to like 60, 65 and see the old Hopgood, but unfortunately not. Then for the bench here, nothing I'm really going to jump at here. So I'll throw to you, Monty. Any other para questions?
We do touch on it earlier. Obviously, Riley Smith with this news. Would you buy him?
Riley Smith.
If you were to move Aaron Clark to the forwards to field the 13?
I wouldn't now, just because he only plays around 12 and the cash making potential is reduced now. He's made a lot of money. So I got on either 290 or 310 or something like that. He's now priced at like the 400s.
400s, yeah.
Yeah, so he's a bit pricey at the moment. Not an elite scorer, and there's just a little bit of a chance that he loses some minutes this week as well. So that's what I'd be looking at. But I'd probably be targeting Zach Docker-Clay if you want a pure fullback. He's cheaper. He's only relevant in the majors, but that's all right because Aaron Clark plays all the other rounds anyway. So you've got a plug and play great hooker duo there. Other option there could be, I don't know, you target, a middle forward instead, and you can go cheap with Hot Boy, or you could jump on like Morgan Smithies. I like Morgan Smithies more than I like Reed. I was not Reed, sorry, Riley.
Riley, yeah.
I think Morgan Smithies is much more interesting than Riley, actually. So same price too, 450K. Yeah. Scored a 74 last week.
Big minutes.
1% owned too. Oh, sorry, or less, 0% owned in the top 5,000. So if I needed a mid, I'd probably buy Morgan Smithies this week. I think that's a great pod. And the reason it works, by the way, is Nicholson's out. So Hosking has gone into the back row, which has impacted the rotations of the middle forwards there. And now Sasangi is playing that role where he spells Hosking. And we're also seeing the two hookers playing on the field at the same time a bit too. So, yeah, he's an interesting one. Could be like a 45 average through this period and be significantly underpriced.
And then we have a couple of questions on Jack Williams. Had a big score last week. Would you look to get him? He's a middle and edge duel.
Jack Williams. I like Jack. The footwork on show was pretty special last week. I don't know if I can trust him as a fantasy prospect. I just don't think there's enough upside in this one. I don't think he's going to be consistent enough. So he'll have those games, but he'll have those quiet games to where he scores you 37. And at the price he's at, you just can't afford that. So I'd rather go cheaper and go on Morgan Smithies instead.
And then another kind of pod play, Junior Paulo. He's had a great last couple of weeks. Would you look to get him in? He's priced at 600 now, which is quite expensive.
He's going good. These guys are all kind of worse versions of Josh Curran, right? So Curran's got, dual position, plays all three major buy rounds, has some limitations. These guys have more limitations and play less buy rounds. So I've got them all behind Josh Curran. And Josh Curran is really only a fringe option in my head. So I'm going to say no.
And then would you ever consider Kelma Tulangi as the new mascot of the casual athlete?
I try to pick players that I think will turn it around. Kelma's a tough one because he loses his spot all the time. If he can hit, the issue is he's not the week-to-week starting back row at Parramatta, right?
Yeah.
I think Samrani will grow into that at some point. So I'm going to say no to Kelma, but Kalen Ponga could be an option there. Or you know what? Pierre Kura, by the way, he's not dislodged yet. So he scored 12 last week.
Yeah.
So Pierre Kura went back to his old ways. 12 points in 46 minutes. That was OG Pierre Kura because he heard that we were thinking about changing it to Kellen Ponga.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say no to Kelma. That one's a lost cause, Louis.
And then you wanted to touch on this a bit more. Thoughts on Samrani?
Samrani is fun. Yeah, he's a beast.
344K center.
Look, if he played another major buy round, like if he played round 15 as well, and he had dual position with wing fullback, I might have bought him last week or the week before. I actually really like Samrani. He comes on and he plays in the forwards most of the time. So he's that backup in the forward spot. He's playing center this week because they're missing guys, but he could grow into being the starting back rower at Parramatta. They're not loving the other options there. He might come off the bench. They might run something where they go Jack Williams, starting back rower for the first 25, then Samrani comes on for 55. The issue is it's such a set of musical chairs here at Parramatta. So you're not sure what he's going to do. And the upside isn't great either because Samrani doesn't make your 17 most weeks and also doesn't play 2 of the 3 major buy rounds. So I'm going to say no just on buy round schedule. But if you're in a draft league, I like him as a high upside pod. And if you're playing head to head, then you could look at him in there as well. Cool. Let's keep rolling through. Just finished my coffee, so we're revved up. Let's get into it. Next game. Jumping into. Oh, by the way, guys, quick reminder: no games on Friday at 6 p.m. It's only 8 p.m. there.
You skip the Manly team as well. The coffee.
Oh.
Coffee, I think's gone.
Oh,
straight
fast,
to the.
Too fast. I'll stick to it. Also, just quickly, just reply in the chat there, guys. If you would like, I'm thinking about doing a live video either on Thursday at 6:30 or on Friday at 6:30 to like fill the footy slot there. Just that last minute stuff. There's going to be a bunch of news coming through, a bunch of confirmations on injuries. So if you would like me to jump on a live just before the round starts, let me know in the comments that you'd be keen, and I'll think about doing that one. I'm thinking about adding a show like that there as well. Now for Manly, let's jump into it while I'm waiting for that. So Turbo at fullback. We got Sub, Kohler, Garrick, Hopewadi on the wing. We go to Brooks and Arthur in the halves there. Then Bullimore, Simpkin, Takiaho in the front row. Olakuatu, Ben Trbojevic, superstar, 74 points last week. And Jazz Tavanga at lock. My boy, my man, he's there. Lachlan Croker on the bench with Waddell, Brown, and Lodge. And this is a fantastic bench for our boy Jazz Tavanga. So good news here. Let's just start with Jazz here. So Jazz has been named at lock. He's the guy. And they've named 2 hookers, which means he is purely a middle forward this week. Now, middle forward spot, Jazz averages 58 and 61 minutes when he plays big minutes. So we see that PPM. We saw it last week. He's still got it. When he went back into the middle forward spot, he came out and he pumped out over a PPM, right?
Yeah.
So, he's a bit slow at the start. Then he had his HIA, passed his HIA, came back for us. I was shocked when he passed that, by the way. Like
Same here. Here.
I didn't think he was passing, but I'm the worst judge of all when it comes to HIA. It's like I see a guy get knocked out and wobble, and I think, oh yeah, that'll be a failed HIA. No, it's a pass.
Play on.
Or a guy looks good, and then he goes off and he fails his HIA.
Exactly.
So obviously, I don't know how concussions work. But for Jazz Tavanga, this is great news. So if you've got Jazz, ride the wave. If you don't have Jazz, I'm not targeting him right now. I just think Jake Trbojevic isn't in the Origin side, so you'd be relying on Jake making it back in. The issue too is that Jake plays these non-major buy rounds as well. So Jazz, I don't know what's his role here. Like he goes into the prop rotation potentially, or he plays really well, and Jake goes into the prop rotation. It's very dicey. And he's not 330K now, he's 450K. So you're paying a big price there. Morgan Smithies is the same price, plays 1 less major buy round, doesn't cover hooker, but is a reliable sort of 40s kind of scorer there. So I just probably wouldn't jump on Jazz right now. But if you've got it in your team, enjoy it, ride the wave, and you'll be sweet. Now, for Manly here, I'll throw to questions here actually, because I think there's a lot of guys to talk about. So let's see who people are asking about. Guys, fire your Manly questions through. We can sort of jump in and talk about that.
The first question here, would you look to hop on Garrick this week? You haven't owned him already.
You're a Manly fan. What do you think?
I think this week is the week that he can go back to scoring what he can. He's a goal-kicking centre in a side that when they put on points, they can put on points. And I just think he's gone a bit cheaper after that 90 at the start of the year. So I think this is the perfect time to get on him. Garrick plays all the major buy rounds. No brainer, really.
Garrick's been 100% my plan from about 6 weeks ago when he was at a high price. And I was thinking, all right, he needs to drop back in price a bit for me, and then I'll buy him at this point. Reason for that is everything you've said there, but also they play Parramatta this week. Parramatta missing Moses and Lomax, who are very important to them, and they play the Titans in round 15. Who will be missing Tino, Mo Fodawaker, Bo Firma, a few other guys there potentially as well with injuries. They deal with a lot of those. And I just think Garrick's going to tear up in both those games. As you said, goal kicker. So if Manly win, he wins. He's a borderline captain option this week. And it won't be talked about because his form's not great, but he has the potential to go big in this game. I think he's a great option to buy. Plays all 3 major buy rounds, still position. It just makes too much sense. It makes too much sense. The fixtures are too good. I'm almost certainly buying Garrick myself. And I think if you need a wing fullback center, he's normally not going to, light your team on fire and, absolutely kill it with crazy plays, but he just sort of comes out and does the little things right. So yeah, great option there. Real plug and play sort of guy. And you can take a risk with other spots. If you've got Garrick there, because he is so flexible and so reliable.
Would you look at grand final try scorer Jacob Arthur at all?
I love that that's his title. I use that with my mates all the time as well.
Yeah.
He did score that try. Jake Arthur, his plus minus, if you follow NBA, his plus minus in that game I think was plus 12. So he had a pretty good stat line there. But for Jake Arthur, I wouldn't be targeting him, no. I don't know what his price is, but whatever it is, it's too expensive. Even if it's 230K. Look, he'll play the 3 major buy rounds. So if you're desperate, you're desperate. But you've got Savala already, most likely. So you probably don't need to do it. I actually think Luke Brooks is more interesting than Jake Arthur. So Brooks has 2 games without Trey Evans at Manly. He scored a 52 and a 54. He had about 600 kick meters a game, and he didn't have heavy attacking stats in those games. So Brooks, with these good fixtures, could potentially be a 60-60-60 kind of scorer in these 3 major buy rounds, which I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it could happen.
And then a couple of Ethan Bullimore. Would you look to grab him? He's starting again. Would you look to grab him with all these players coming back soon?
What's he priced at? Let's just have a look. Because I think he sort of
474.
Yeah, okay. Let me just see his numbers here. That price, I'd rather get someone who's a bit more secure. But what have his minutes been like? So he's sort of gone. Yeah, okay. So start of the year, because he had the double start of the year and the try as well. So he had those big scores. But last few weeks, I'll read you out the minutes here. So you go 44 minutes, then 24 minutes, then 39, and then 35. So just not enough minutes for me. Too much potential for those low scores. He's had some big attacking plays in his game, and he's a good player. I like him a lot, but I'd need to see him playing like 45 minutes a game. And transparently, if I was the Manly coach, he would be playing 45 minutes a game. I think he's playing great, but he just isn't playing that role. And when Gerbo comes back, if he goes to prop, it messes things up. I just don't think he's secure enough. I'd rather go for Smithies over Bullmore 100%.
Any love for Corey Waddell? He's got a real cheap, low break even, or do you think it's a pass?
Again, what are Waddell's minutes? He had a big game last week, I saw, and he sort of stepped up. But let me just grab his numbers here. Because, let me read you these minutes. 44 minutes last week, 58 points, had 2 line breaks. That's one more than he had in the previous, 8 games combined, right? And then before that, it was a 19-minute game, a 40-minute game, a 30-minute game. He's not a big PPM guy. He's got scores of 7, 8, 17, 19, 15 this year. And he'd need to be, he's 344K. No, is he going to get a role? He's kind of looking because the issue is Brown and Lodge are their bench props here. So he's kind of the bench lock, edge back rower. Yeah. You're a Manly fan, mate. I'll throw to you. Do you think he can? Do you like him? Do you think he's going to earn more minutes? I don't see it. I don't
think so. With that Jake Trbojevic injury, someone had to play more minutes, and Waddell was that guy. And I just think, Manly, we've got heaps of troops coming back, so I think he's going to go back to that lower minute role on the bench.
Yeah, agree with that. The questions here from Manly.
Yes, final question. He's the cheapest Trbojevic in fantasy. Tom Trbojevic, really cheap. What are your thoughts?
I knew we'd start talking about this one. So Tommy Turbo. I've got thoughts. Look, at some, it's coming through. At some point, he will be the best buy in fantasy. At some point. Now, you have to remember, when I say this, you have to remember I said this about Reece Walsh. I said this about Kellen Ponga. And I still believe it about those guys, by the way. When Walsh comes back, I'll be looking at him. Right? At some point, Turbo will be the best buy in fantasy. He's a guy who can go on a scorching hot run. But until then, he will score 2 points in 80 minutes, and those low 20 scores and sort of have those quiet ones. Now, when do I think that bounce back is going to be? I've got a feeling that it could be this week. And I don't know. So here's where I sit. My advice on the channel is usually a bit more balanced and a bit less crazy than what I do with my actual team. So my advice here is probably that he's got a 64-point break even. The smart move would be to wait and see the form turn around before you jump on. But for my team, I'm kind of looking at it and going, I wouldn't mind just jumping on now. And, if Parramatta gets smashed, at least I get to see Turbo score some points. Because last week he had a shocker. He had 6 errors. But a few of those errors were in try-scoring situations where he was putting himself in those spots. He was running hard. He was doing everything he could. You know what I mean? Like I just think it could be the bounce back game, and you'll look like a genius if you jumped on. But you could also go and score your 10 points. So it's extremely risky. It's a tough one for me to recommend. But if you are a believer, you jump on. But I don't want to hear a single word of complaint. If you go buy him right now and he goes and scores poorly for you, that's the risk you took. It's kind of on you. So I think there's going to be a few coaches who take this gamble right now, and they're going to be like, the people who bought Walsh or the people who jumped on Ponga a couple of weeks ago, or, it doesn't always work, but this one, I've got a feeling this one might come off pretty soon. So that's my early answer on Turbo. Cool. Let's keep rolling through these teams. So, and by the way, if someone asked Cola or Turbo, I'd go Turbo over Cola just because Cola doesn't have keeper upside. Turbo at least could be a keeper if things go right. Now, we've got the Panthers and the Knights here next. For the Panthers, let's run through this team. Big Dane Laurie at fullback. He should be a killer. If you're in a draft league, I like him a lot, but not in Classic. Alamotti, Tungo. Casey McLean comes back with Tommy Jenkins there, so it's bad news for Jenko. Blaze and Schneider in the halves. Forward pack here is Leota, Kenny, Eisenhuth. Then we go to Liam Henry, Mystery Man in the back row, blank spot, and Lindsay Smith. Somerton, Ricky, Patea, and Cole on the bench. Now, this Mystery Man, no prizes for guessing who this is, but who's your guess, mate?
Oh, I've just refreshed my page, and it is in, and it's not the person you think.
Is it Liam Henry?
No. Preston Ricky.
What is going on?
Liam Henry and Preston Ricky in the back row. Papali is nowhere to be seen.
Where's Isaiah Papali? Okay, well, look.
Wow.
This is interesting. So, I don't know where Papali is. I'm going to be transparent, guys. Is there a mention of it down here?
No, he's fallen off the face of the earth by the looks of it.
Maybe he's, I'm just going to refresh the page just so I get that proper team list there, guys. But maybe he's going back to Parramatta. Maybe that's finally happening. That's a bit of wishful thinking. Yeah, not in the extended. There doesn't seem to be a mention down here.
Luke Garner as well. No mention of him.
Well, it says here that Garner, Case McLean comes to the centers and Garner moves to the back row. So the caption here is completely different to what team list is. Anyway, this could be a mess, guys. So we'll go through it as it is, but there's a chance that this is a bit of an error. I don't know. There's been enough time. They should have corrected it by now.
NRL Physio, the comment is saying, so I think they're on it more than us.
Yep.
So, knee injury by NRL Physio.
Okay, there we go. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Yeah, while we're recording, unfortunately, we're not scrolling on our phones, so we missed that. But let's go to the back line here first. So, Laurie in draft leagues is super hot. Jenkins is startable. The Knights are pretty terrible right now. So, you can start Jenkins in this game. Wouldn't expect the world, but should be solid there for you. Blaze and Schneider. I think Schneider's a good one if you're in a draft league as well. But again, it's only a rental, right? So they play this week. Origin guys will back up next week. Maybe they play round 16, but they don't play the major buy rounds other than this week. So I'm not really targeting too many Panthers. So I'll go pretty quick here. For the forward pack here, Liam Henry in the back row is pretty awesome. Let me just grab this stat, but I have a specific memory of Liam Henry playing in the second row and scoring like 60 or 70 points in that back row spot. So I'm just going to grab the exact numbers here.
I do think he's jagged a try or two as well in the back row, just from memory, I believe.
Sorry?
He jagged a try or two.
Yeah, so he's got 3 games from last year in the second row. His average across 72 minutes is 62.
Wow.
The average tackle count is 57.
Oh.
So 49, 50, and 71. No tries in that 62 average, by the way. So I think he's moved to the back row in games and scored tries, by the way. I think I know what you're thinking of. These are just starting in the back row numbers. Meters gained is 83. Tackle breaks is 0.7. So there's like zero offloads. It's just defensive stats here for him. So 57 tackles, 62 points. Basically hooker numbers. But yeah, for Liam Henry, if you need a middle forward, is he dual position? Yes, I'm trying to remember.
Yes, I believe he is middle and edge.
Yeah, mid edge. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I don't look at Liam Henry too much, but if you need a guy, he's pretty cheap. Like he's at 477K. He's priced at a 35. He should be solid through this period. The Origin guys aren't going to back up in round 16. Liam Martin loves a rest as well. If Papali'i is out for a decent amount of time and we get some sort of explanation for Garner, I have no idea what's going on there, then yeah, I mean, maybe, Papali, obviously knee injury. So Garner's not the one from the injury, is he?
Papali
Yeah.
is, I believe. Yes.
Where's Garner then? That's my big question. But yeah, so yeah, I guess we'll have a look at that. I'll have a concrete answer on that and buy, hold, sell. Like we're getting a lot of news right now, but the initial answer is Liam Henry pumps out huge numbers in the back row. I actually stashed him in all of my draft leagues a couple of weeks ago, just in preparation for this, because he's such a beast when he gets those big minutes. But it's backed up, by the way, too. So his reserve grade numbers, if you check those out, they were like historically, they were really good too. So yeah, super stud option there. Just doesn't cover heaps of buys, but great glue guy for your team if you do want to go at that price point. Yeah, a few of you guys were asking about Riley Smith. If you've got another hooker, got Aaron Clark, whatever, I'd target Liam Henry over Riley Smith for sure. So that could be a beast. I don't know if this is true. John, I've seen you around before, so you're normally pretty above board, but kind of being released, a bit of chat there. We'll update that as we get the information. Now, I'll throw to you, Monty. Any questions on the Panthers here that we have to nail down?
Kind of just general. Target any of them, would you?
You could. There could be some minutes on offer. The issue is that Eisenhuth is a real minute sponge, so he'll take a lot of those minutes up. They don't play enough major buy rounds. I think Liam Henry's the one who benefits here, and I wouldn't target many of the others. Maybe Lindsay Smith if you're looking for a guy, but again, not enough major buy rounds.
And then final question for the Panthers: is Jenkins a sell if you have the 13 players already?
Yeah. I sold Jenkins last week to get Tarbonnet, so it was a nice little trade. But yeah, I'd be open to sell him. The other option is if you have your 13 already, you could do a loophole here too. So if you've got another player who plays before Jenkins or another player who plays after Jenkins, you can run that loophole on your bench there and see how Jenkins scores, then take the better score of him on. Let's say you had Jenkins and Iongi, for example. That'd be a perfect loophole. We just see how Iongi scores, deciding taking his score or taking Jenkins instead. So try to loophole him if you can, but if you need to trade, you can trade as well.
That's all for the Panthers. Plenty of questions on the Knights, though.
On the Knights here. So let's turn to the Knights. So Fletcher Sharp, James Schiller, Dan Gagai, McCarthy, Hunt. Then we go to Gamble and Cogger. Forward pack here is Frizzell, Crossland, Thompson. Then we go to Lucas, Pierce, Paul, Elliott. Jumping across to the bench here, Brayley, Croker, Jones, and Cant. So for the Knights here, this is a dicey one. I'm getting asked a lot of questions about Fletcher Sharp here first. For Fletcher Sharp, I'm a little bit pessimistic about the move to fullback. So I think he'll keep on doing exactly what he's been doing, running up big meters. He'll have some more run meters. He won't have the 25 tackles a game that he's had before, so that's a downside. But I think Fletcher Sharp will come out. He'll do a job. Right? So if I was going to give you a projected average across a full season at fullback for Fletcher Sharp, I'd probably say he's in the realms of, something similar to Drinkwater minus the goal kicking. So like a 50, 49, that kind of thing. So I think he'd be fine. My concern here is that we have a Knights team that doesn't have Bradman Best in the center spot. So they've got Kyle McCarthy there. They've got Dylan Lucas in the back row. But last week, I think we saw his involvement drop because they weren't targeting that Bradman Best edge as much, right? And Bradman Best is a focal point of their attack. Without him there, Fletcher Sharp wasn't getting that ball to go to the best edge. So that edge in general just looked really clamped up by Parramatta, I might add as well, who aren't a defensive juggernaut. And I think without Bradman Best, a lot of those lanes start to close up because teams aren't having to double team one of the most destructive runners in the game. So that's a long period of time. I think that's the bigger L for Fletcher Sharp than anything else. Now, I guess the answer to the question of how does his move to fullback affect him, I think that downgrade happens at 6. And then I think the fullback thing actually bumps him up a little bit because it gives him involvement across the entire field. So he's taken a big hit and he's taken a little bump back up to fullback. But when they're back at full strength, I actually like him at 6 better. You know what I mean?
I agree.
Yeah, it's a bit of a sort of catch-22 there. So for him, I'm not captaining Fletcher Sharp. I'm not vice-captaining Fletcher Sharp. I'm not recommending to buy Fletcher Sharp if you don't have him right now. I'm not recommending to sell him. I think he's just one of those guys that he's been balling. He's going to keep balling. And he has a great origin schedule. You keep him in your team, you see what happens, and you go, he scored 80, or he scored 30. And you don't really get too emotionally invested in it because he's owned by like 90% of top teams anyway. So that's my view on Fletcher Sharp. I just think he's a bit of a non-factor this week, really. Like he's in all our teams. We're not going to sell him. Ride the wave. Dylan Lucas in the back row here.
Interesting.
Pretty fun. Yeah. So good news that he's in the back row again. That's cracking news. So he'll be back in this game. The shoulder injury sounds like it's one that could be re-triggered. So we saw Toby Couchman for a while sort of dealing with random shoulder issues. It sounds like Dylan Lucas might have a little bit of that. It could be less severe. We don't really know. But for Dylan Lucas, he played out the game last week with that issue. So maybe it's not that bad. I'm going to keep him in my 17. Of course, I'm not going to sell Dylan Lucas. He's been named in the back row as well, which I think is a move for Newcastle. Yeah. They need him in that spot. They've got Kyle McCarthy in the center spot. So that's good news. There is a chance that they get Marzu back in 2 weeks, which is pretty soon, or they might get Dom Young across. Like, I just think Dylan Lucas is locked in to stay in that spot. So he's a hold. He's not a buy. This is my answer on Lucas. I'd target Herbie over Lucas. I was buying one of them this week. I'll throw to you. Any questions here on Newcastle?
Yes, we do. If you're looking for a mid this week, is Leo Thompson someone you look to target?
Leo. Yeah, you could. Jacob Savidi's out, so that's kind of good news for him. I probably wouldn't. I just think that we talked about a few other middle forwards that are more interesting at different price points. He's got a pretty good origin schedule, but I think Smithies is very similar to Leo at a lower price point. I think you go cheap with Hopboy. You could go top end, like you said, with Fanua Blake, McInnes, these types of guys. I'd probably stick to some of those players instead. Shout out Flo too, up the Sharks. Good timing there. We're talking about McInnes and Fanua Blake. Yeah, I can tell you're a Sharks fan.
You touched on that, Leo Thompson, and then Kai Pearce-Paul. With Dylan Egan gone, would you consider going Dylan Egan to Kai Pearce-Paul for this round?
So I bought KPP 2 weeks ago. Yeah, wow. So I'm a KPP truther. He was on track for 75 points last week, the absolute turd burglar, and he came out and he was pumping, and then he got himself sin binned, and he scored me a 60, which is fine. But the -7 from the sin bin plus the 10 minutes of playtime
could have been a 70, 80.
Man, he was pushing for like 80. It was just crazy. And yeah, so I take that as a positive sign regardless. I think he's getting a lot of ball in this team. He's averaging like 55. Yeah. So he's a rock solid option if you need an edge forward. He's just as good as Ewan Aitken, but he is a bit more expensive, but also a bit more secure in his position and less injury prone. So I think he's a better option than Ewan Aitken, but you pick the one that suits your team in terms of origin schedule. If you don't need a player this week in the edge back row spot, I wouldn't break your team to go and buy him. But if you need someone, he's a great plug and play. I've got him. Happy to recommend him.
Yeah, there are different, and there are more options next week as well, so you don't necessarily need to.
Kalamatangi too. Like he's in a different league, man.
100%.
Yeah. Anyone asking about Fletcher Hunt after his 12?
No. I have one question, Fletcher Hunt. Thoughts on him?
Yeah, I mean, he had a tough matchup last week. Zach Lomax.
He got Lomaxed.
Yeah. And Lomax is I could almost go out and say Lomax is the best winger in the comp. Like that.
Yeah.
You could almost say that right now. In terms of form, after last week, you could definitely say it. Brian To'o is obviously, he has that title, but Lomax is definitely pushing him. So I think this is an easier matchup, more attainable. But Newcastle's attack is not good. So I'm going to say no on Hunt. Yeah. Cool. We'll keep rolling through then. Let's tear into more of these teams. So that's 5:30. Just a quick reminder, you don't have any games at the 3 p.m. slot on Sunday. So games start at 5:30, go to 7:30. So you're going to have a free day. I'll make sure to tell all your missos that you have that free day and they'll drag you to a farmer's market or something, as mine does. But Roosters v Sharks up next, 7:30. This one is interesting. So Roosters well under strength due to origin, injuries, that kind of thing. And the Sharks are looking full and fit and ready. Jesse Ramian named as big news here as well. So for the Roosters, we'll go to them first. Jimmy Tedesco, one of the most popular buys for this week, one that I'll talk about in a sec. Dan Tupou, Billy Smith, Nawani Tuase, and Dom Young comes back as well. Then we have Sandon Smith and Hugo Savala. Going to the forward pack here, we got Makatoa, Docker Clay, Fiketti. This is a new look here. Egan Butcher, Sua Wong, Victor Radley at lock. Then we go to, I don't know how to pronounce that.
Benaya Aolu.
Aolu?
Iolu, I believe,
Iolu.
yeah.
Thank you. This is why you're the
Yeah.
journalism major man. Iolu, Lasalu, Steep, and Nat Butcher back too. So Nat Butcher back. Just want to say, cracker to see him back. I love Nat Butcher.
yeah.
I don't know what it is. I just love the way he plays footy. Just a crafty little try scorer, undersized, but he just does everything. He gets everything out of his talent.
He does.
Like such an awesome player. So I think he'll eat up some minutes here. He definitely limits the upside of some of these cheapies. Now, if we're going through, let's stay on the forward pack here first, the Roosters, because more broadly, I'm going to answer this question. So Connor Watson's out. That means that Zach Docker-Clay is going to be like a 40 to 55 average across round 12, 15, and 18. Connor Watson plays off the bench in Origin, usually plays about 20 minutes. So he most likely backs up from Origin, you would expect. So I would say Connor Watson is going to play all the other rounds. So basically, if you buy Zach Docker-Clay, you get him for all 3 major buy rounds and nothing else. Do not factor him in at all. You basically play with one less roster spot for every other week. But for those major buy rounds, he's fantastic. You never have to worry about Hooker again. If I didn't have Riley Smith and I only had Jazz Tavanga, Aaron Clark, these types of players, I'd consider Docker-Clay because he's pumped out some big numbers before in the past. So he's an option if you need a hooker. I'll answer that one there. Then for the rest of the forward pack here, I was really hoping we'd see Blake Steep named in the front row. I'm a big Blake Steep fan. He's a big work rate. You know, he's a bit like Liam Henry, where he's got those great reserve grade stats, and he absorbs minutes and he turns them into fantasy points, right? So the fact that he's on the bench there is less encouraging. I can't recommend him now with the fact that he's on the bench. And the issue here is you got Fiketti and Makatoa on the starting side. I'm not really recommending them either. Makatoa's not a guy, who's at Parramatta for a long time. He's not a guy who churns out fantasy points. And then Fiketti, again, not the PPM guy that Steep is, right? So I'm probably steering away from most of these guys. Let me just grab Fiketti's numbers just to be sure, though. So for Fiketti, 314K, priced at 23. This year he's averaged, 25 in 33 minutes, right? So it's just not quite what I'd want there from a guy. Whereas, like, if you go to Steep, for Blake Steep, you're looking at when it loads, you're looking at much better PPM numbers, right? For Blake Steep. So I'm just not too excited about that. I will say though, Victor Radley, interesting option here. So if you're looking at Victor Radley, he's one who has pumped out that sort of 45 to 50 average in the past. Could be an option you target. By the way, Steep, I just got numbers there, 32 points in 32 minutes. Do you know what I mean? So it's if that translates to 50 minutes, you get 50 average out of him. He's pumped out big numbers. Radley is an interesting one. I wouldn't buy Saul Wong right now, only available at edge and just a bit inconsistent as a scorer. But if you have him in your team, you hold on to him. Radley is the one, right? Radley is the one that you're probably targeting. He doesn't really get negatively impacted by the guys coming back either. So the players being injured doesn't really change how I view Radley. But he's just going to pump out that sort of 45 average minus, the risk that he does have that HIA. That's the downside. But everything else is good in Radley. He can have a quiet game, but again, you're buying for an average. I wouldn't get too obsessed with the roller coaster. Just look for that 45 average across a long period of time. Now, look, I'll throw to you here, Monty. Would you recommend Radley, or do you think it's too much for a risk to do?
I think it's too much of a risk. For me personally, if there Radley wasn't getting the HAs that he was, I'd 100% put him into my team. But it's just, I find it's just too risky because, there were people that bought in Nafai Hill White last week and he got injured. And I just think it's just, you're better off going someone spending that bit more or going right down to a hot boy who we spoke about at the start. I reckon you're just safer off getting someone who's not as injury prone.
What I'll counter with here, right? This is a random. It's so random, so don't take me too seriously here. Yeah. But Radley HIAs are your concern, right?
Yeah.
Radley has a perfectly built-in buy schedule to make sure that he plays all the major buy rounds. So he doesn't play round 14 or round 17. So the week before both major buy rounds, plus this one he's playing this week, he's guaranteed to play all 3 majors. So he may miss a game here and there in those weeks where you don't need him as much, right? But he is guaranteed not to have a HIA rule him out of major buy rounds unless it's like a multi-week one, which is possible. But Do you know what I mean? Like,
It's a good point. It definitely is.
He's pretty safe. Like, I reckon he's actually a pretty banging option. I was hyped on him a couple of weeks ago before he scored that 65, and it kind of ruined his price a little bit. Also, I have Horsburgh, who I now don't need to replace. So I'm just in a spot where I don't need the forwards. But I think Radley's a good option. But you do have that risk, right? There is that risk. There's always a risk. There's a reason why guys are cheap. Victor Radley, banging option, I reckon. But risky, as you said there too.
Yeah.
Now, rest of the Roosters team, backline here. I do think Cronulla roll the Roosters here. So I think any backline option just needs to be viewed with a bit of trepidation. So for Jimmy Tedesco, gets the work done. Oh no, I'm sort of looking at him. I'll throw you Monty here. What do you think of Teddy? Like, do you think he's a must-have, or where do you have him on your buy scale?
I wouldn't say a must-have. I'd definitely pick Garrick over Teddy at this stage. Just against this full-strength Sharks side. Like, Sharks haven't lost anyone, and I just think that he's definitely someone who can score you that 40 or 50 and even like a high 30s. But I feel like there are just better options at cheaper prices, and like James Tedesco is a Dylan Edwards injury away from Origin again. So I just think, Teddy, he's definitely someone that I'm considering, but for me, I'm still 50-50 on him.
Or a loss at Suncorp. Yeah. So they lost game 1 last year. They changed fullbacks.
Yeah.
You know, it definitely could happen. Teddy, I agree. I think Teddy, he's the keeper wing fullback this week. So if you buy Teddy, you're buying Teddy for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to separate your emotional response from this week's score. You kind of be like, all right, you know what? I think he might score, a 40 this week or whatever it is there. He could pop off as well, by the way.
Oh, 100%.
But like, I think you're buying him for the rest of the year. So you kind of just don't get too attached this week. So I think he's a good option. You plug and play for the rest of the year. There are other options. Garrick is borderline keeper. Probably not quite a keeper, to be honest, but borderline. And then there's other guys that are cheaper that aren't keepers. So you're going to have to sell them later and you're low on trades, tricky situation. So I think Teddy is a very safe option, but I do think this week's score won't be his best score. I think this week could be like a 40 and then he bounces back later on there. But at the same time, he plays all 3 major buy rounds. So I'll be eyeing him off probably more likely like round 15 myself. I've got some other options that I like more. And as you said, Garrick there, more of a value option there, but some other options I'm looking at too. So any other guys here? I mean, Nawani Tuase is rock solid. Like he's been rolling with some good scores. You just keep rolling with him until he caps out. Dom Young, if you're in a draft league, don't hate that little pickup. I stashed him as well, by the way.
Yeah,
him and Liam Henry.
Wow, stashing up.
Oh, mate, you just gotta take your guys. But that's actually in a little super coach draft league too. So Dom Young was like a 3rd round pick, or 2nd round pick.
Was.
Yeah, and now he's on my team. Sucked in. But rest of the Roosters team, I just think they're very understrength, so I think they might get beaten in this one. For the Sharkies, we got Kennedy, Hiroti, Ramian, Iro, Mulatalo on the back line, Trindle and Hines in the halves, Fanua Blake, big boy Fanua Blake, 80 plus, Brayley, Kafusi, then Nakora, Burns, and McInnes, Atkinson, Colhoun, Talakai, and Hamlin Uele on the bench. And let's just see if Teague Wilton's on the extended. Teague Wilton and Jersey 21. Okay. So there's a big chance that Burns doesn't play this week if Wilton comes in or Burns plays limited minutes off the bench. If that happens, he is not startable and is a sell. But if you keep starting, you get rolling with him. Now, for the Sharks here, a lot of attacking opportunities on offer in this game. So I think they're going to win this game. I think they're going to win it well. It's just about picking who is going to step up. Now, if you want a center right now and you don't have Dylan Lucas and you're sort of a bit off him with the injury, Kale Iro is not outrageous to target. Just keep in mind he does have the buy in round 13. So if you've got Herbie as well, you're going to have to cover that buy round, but you should be okay. Most of us have a lot of centers. For Hines, I mean, actually, I'd love to throw to you here. Do you think Hines is a captain option this week, or where are you sitting on him?
I definitely think he's okay. He's probably up there, top 4 captain options for me, because there's plenty of attacking stats up for grabs in this game, and I just think that the Sharks are playing really good footy at the moment, and I think that this is a game where Hines could jag a try, definitely a couple of try assists. So, and if the Sharks put on points, he's a goal kicker. So I wouldn't talk you out of captaining Hines, that's for sure. Yeah,
I think he's a bit behind Isaiah Katoa, but I completely agree with you. Like he has that potential to pop off, and we haven't seen that Nico Hines 120-point game this year.
It's coming. I feel like it's coming.
Could be this week. So okay, hopefully it is. That'd be nice. He definitely does have that in him, right? So if you like Nico, you like Nico. I wouldn't really target the rest of the back line here. Jesse Ramian in as well. That kind of hurts people who are looking at Talakai as an option. If Talakai got like 4 to 6 weeks, something like that, as a starting side, he'd be a must-have. But unfortunately not. Then for the forward pack here, I guess it's Fanua Blake. You want to talk about? It's probably Nakora as well. I think Nakora has a big game this week. Cam McInnes is just safe as houses there. There's not really anyone else there to talk about. So we'll go AFB first. AFB first. And look, AFB, he had that big game. The interesting thing about that game was Cronulla have looked kind of rubbish in wins recently. And in that game, they came out against the Storm in a game where they weren't expected to win. And it was a prove yourself kind of game. It was are you a title contender? Can you beat the Storm game? They came out, they won that game well. Fanua Blake was why they won well. Like, I'm just going to say he was the reason why they won that game. He was a monster in that game. Played big minutes, very impactful. Tackle break, scored that try. He was very, very good. And if Cronulla want to be a good team, he's going to have to be very, very good. So you've kind of got to make your own personal call here on this, because the 2 weeks before that, he wasn't sort of running like he was trying to break tackles. I don't know if he was injured or whatever it was. It just didn't look good. So we've seen 2 Fanua Blakes. Now, if you believe that that's his awakening and he's going to light it up through the origin period, which is what I believe, then you can jump on him. But the risk is that he plays 40 minutes and scores you 35 points, and then has an occasional game where he scores a try and gets 50. Like that's the risk there with Fanua Blake. So it's a gamble. It's a gamble that I've taken. It's a gamble that I recommend, but it is a gamble that could burn you as well. The counter to this one is that Cam McInnes is there. Cam McInnes is safe as houses. Doesn't have that meteoric upside that Fanua Blake has with the minutes he plays. So you're not going to go below 40 with McInnes basically ever. But you're also not going to go above 70 most of the time too. So it's really up to you. Do you want to ride the wave with a super dynamic but low floor option like Fanua Blake, or do you want the safety of Cam McInnes? It's a personal choice. I can't answer it for you. You've got to make your own call. I've taken AFB, which you probably expect with the crazy picks I take, but it's definitely caused a few heart problems. Monty, if you were choosing between these two, which way do you lean?
I'd go McInnes.
Yeah,
I think just that safety, and he can have that. If you play 70 minutes, he gets 70 points. It's just he's one of those players where you don't need to watch the game. You just need to look at how many minutes he plays, and then that's McInnes for you.
Safe as houses, mate. Yeah. So see, they're 2 different cases, and they're both correct, I think. Nakora's another one. So Nakora's a bit of a bet on form, and Cronulla again, like they're not affected by Origin too much. So I think they're going to dominate through this period. I think Hines will go well. I think AFB will go well. Nakora's a fun option, but we have so many edges. I like him less than I like Aitken, right? I like him less than, KPP, a few other guys there. So he's not on my target list, but if you do want a pod and you're low on cash, Nakora's a great option there. I'll throw to you, Monty. Any other questions?
Yes, we do. This is just kind of a general question. Is 4 Sharks too many to have?
Have a look at how many players you have next week. So Sharks don't play next week. Bulldogs don't play next week. Dolphins. There's a few teams on a bye. Just figure out if you can field the team next week. Also, someone asked how we posted on Instagram just now. So Bergs actually does the team list posts. So he gets onto those while I'm doing this.
And then final question for the Sharks. If you're looking for a hooker, is Brayley someone you'd look to purchase this week?
I just don't think it's worth it. Like, he's fine. He's not a keeper. He doesn't have that nuclear upside that I like out of players at his price point. So I'd rather go cheap. Like, I've got Riley Smith and Jazz Tavanga as my hookers. If I was going to go for an expensive hooker, I don't even know who I'd target. I'd maybe go like Reed Marnie over Brayley. Look, Brayley's safe. Like if you don't want to think about it, you can get Brayley and just never worry about hooker again. But that's not really how I play fantasy. So personally, I'm not that keen, but he is very solid.
And then one more question. Would you go AFB this week or wait a week for Koloamatangi?
Koloamatangi is better than AFB for fantasy if he keeps his spot. Does he keep that spot? Does he make Origin? There's that question. Probably doesn't make Origin, right? So you're probably pretty safe there. I would prioritize Koloamatangi over AFB. But if you need a player this week in the middle forward spot, I guess if it was a case of Koloamatangi in a cheapie or AFB in a cheapie, I'd maybe lean towards Hopboy and Koloamatangi.
Yeah,
right?
I agree.
Yeah, but if you can get both, that's good too. Kalamatangi is dual position, so try to get both. But if you're choosing one, I'd choose Kalamatangi. Now we'll roll through, and I think we've only got one
Final game.
Yeah. So yeah, 4 p.m. Sunday. So it's a bare weekend of games here. I'm gonna have to go outside and do something, which is just devastating. Or watch some other sports.
Yeah. Are there other sports? I thought it was just rugby league.
There's NFL in the off season.
Oh,
Get into
yes.
that. They should launch NRLW through this period as well.
Oh,
They could have some prime time slots.
100%.
Yeah, that's what they should do. I'll reach out to them. But for the Warriors and the Raiders here, so the Wires, we've got CNK, fullback there, DWZ, Pompey, Capewell, Rutulas-Ashek in the back line, then Harris, Tavita, and Metcalf in the halves. Ford, Egan, Afoa in the front row. So no Fisher Harris and no Mitch Barnett. Fisher Harris suspended, Barnett origin. Then we've got Halasima, Niokore, and Clark in the back row. Tyrone Martin, Jacob Laban, Val Munga, and Stowers Smith in the rotation there off the bench. So for the Wires, look, they only play one major bye round, only round 12. So I'm not that interested in them in terms of targets for fantasy buys. The back line, I'm going to just write it off pretty much completely here. I think there's a lot of talented guys in real life, but just not a lot that I'm really targeting for fantasy. Kurt Capewell will get center dual position in round 14, almost certainly. So if you're in a draft league and you don't have a good center, he'll be solid when he goes back to the back row if he gets the minutes. So that could be one to stash. But, if you got Metcalf, you hold on to Metcalf this week, but I'm not targeting him as a buy. Yeah, there's not too much to say here. So for the forward pack, I was going to talk about Fisher Harris before he got himself suspended. And they had that game won. I don't know why he did that.
Yeah, it was very... It wasn't necessary at all.
Yeah, but he's at a good price. He pumped out the 50 plus. He's a machine. So Fisher Harris is now completely off the radar. If you're a head-to-head coach, he's still interesting when he comes back. But for overall coaches, just not enough buy coverage for you there. Jackson Ford for this week will go well. If you're in a draft, he's on the waivers maybe, but just not enough to buy him. Wade Egan is probably... Actually, this bench is not too bad. Tamari Martin is not super threatening. So if you got Egan, you hold Egan, but I wouldn't target him as a buy option either. Afoa, it's just a 1 week rental, so no interest there for me. Halasima keeps playing 80 minutes, rock solid, been killing it, but Capewell keeps playing center, so you don't know how long that's going to last. Aaron Clark, captain, rated out of 10. Monty, what do you think here, Clarkie?
Red hot 9.5. I think with this forward pack, Bunty's not known for playing huge minutes. Even this bench, you rarely see any of them have a huge minute role. I reckon Clark, he could play similar last week at 65, 70 minutes, and he's a smashing option.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's a really safe one this week. He'll come out, he'll get it done. I worry a little bit with the forward pack they have that they're going against Canberra, who, are relatively full strength this week. So there is that risk that they get really beat up in this game. And Aaron Clark, I love Aaron Clark. He's playing great footy. He's a bit undersized, right?
Yeah.
He's a machine. He's a unit, but he's a bit smaller. You got Jackson Ford, who's a bit smaller as well. Afoa, who's not that big minute guy, like you said. And then, Val Munga and Stowers Smith, who have 100 minutes of footy between them in first grade, right?
Yeah.
So their forward pack could get rolled by Canberra this week. Because that's the thing, right? Their forward pack has been so strong. With Mitch Barnett, with James Fisher Harris, he's been out a bit. With Ford, I guess, as well, who's playing in this game. But they could be outmatched in this one. That's my concern there. And normally the Warriors, it's such a strength for them. Their pack is just so strong. But in this game, Clark is going to have to do a lot of the tough stuff, which he has been doing, but really, really step up and do the tough stuff. So that's my one concern there, that we might see him struggle a little bit in real life. Whether that translates to fantasy is another question. They also might get beaten in this game, and maybe gets less minutes if they're getting beaten well. I don't know. I just haven't seen the Warriors play without Barnett and Fisher Harris. It's an eventuality we have to discuss. But if I was going to predict it, I think they keep this game close, and I think the Raiders win in a close one. So just want to keep in mind there. I personally wouldn't captain Aaron Clark myself. I just think there's a lot of nuclear fun upside options there. I think Clark is capped at about a 70 in this game, just because of the game script I sort of foresee there. So I'm personally thinking you go for an Isaiah Katoa or a Nico Hines or a Herbie Farmworth, or you take one of these big upside guys.
Tarpanay.
Yeah, have a bit of fun with it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But Clark is a stud, so if you want that safe captain, I just cannot see him going below 50. So rock solid, very safe. Now for the Raiders here, we got Weeks, Tamale, Tomoko, Chris, Savage. Then we go to Strange and Fogarty in the halves. Horsburgh, Starling, Tarpanay, then Sungy, Hosking, and Smithies in the back row. Paddy, Martin, Papali'i, and Mariota on the bench. So yeah, really solid team here for Canberra. Very close to full strength. No Hudson Young in this game, so Sungy comes into the starting side. He should play pretty big minutes in the back row. So if you're in a draft league, again, he's very cheap, but probably not target him. And I mean, like, he's pretty cheap. Wouldn't he be like 300?
Yeah, he's close to.
Yeah, 265K. Dual position as well, edge and center. We don't really need that position covered too much, but I mean, if you wanted to, you could jump on. I just want to see what his average is actually. So minutes over, let's go minutes over 50. Okay, so minutes over 50, his average is a 38 in 76 minutes. Not inspiring, not enough to be jumping on, but draft league at center, not the worst thing in the world. But for this back line here, look, they got a bit of a boost last week. They put 40 points on the Titans. The Warriors will be much tougher than the Titans were last week. So I would moderate expectations for Tamale. I wouldn't be thinking that Xavier Savage has fully turned the corner. He's a funny one, though. We were pumping him on the cheapies last week. I wish I jumped on. I was thinking about it, but just couldn't sort of force a cheapie into my trades.
Yeah.
I just had too much cash to burn. So I don't know. What do you think here of Savage? Because he's had scores multiple below 10. But he's now had this big game where he went 70 plus.
Oh, he's one of the most electric players to watch and own. You're riding the biggest roller coaster ever. It's just he has scores where he scores 70 and it's perfect, but then it's followed by a 10 and 8. It's very if you're desperate for like a cash down wing fullback and you want a super pod that can make your week or ruin your week, if you're a thrill seeker, I'd get Savage, but me personally, steer clear.
Yeah. See, you summed it up. You've summed it up. It's a crazy pod cheapie that you could jump onto, guaranteed job security. I like him a lot more than I like the mullet Fletcher. On the Knights.
Yeah,
what's his last name?
Hunt.
That's it. Yeah, Fletcher Hunt. Yeah, I would take him over Hunt because he's going to play all year, and he is a 30 average when he plays next to Fogarty as well. So he'll bounce back. He'll make a bit of cash, but only if you need a wing fullback. I wouldn't manufacture a trade to get Savage, but if it suits your plans and it allows you to get another gun that you can get, let's say you needed to go cheap so you could afford Tarpanay or something like that, go and do it. But the rest of the back line here, I mean, Jamal Fogarty's doing Jamal Fogarty things. I've got him behind Hines and Katoa on my half rankings, and you do too. We did the perfect team. Just on matchup. So the Warriors are a tough team. I think Fogarty and Katoa are in easier matchups this week due to the origin players missing from their opponents. So I've got Fogarty number 3 in those halves, but if you have him in your team, you stick with him, obviously. If you don't have him, I'd target those other 2 instead. The upside of Fogarty is he doesn't miss next week, whereas the other 2 do. Yep. So he's a good complement to one of those 2 guys. For the forward pack here, Corey Horsburgh just keeps on going. You stick with Corey Horsburgh. You keep him. He scored a 57 last week. He's pumping. He benefits from the fact that there's no Hosking on the bench there as well. So that sort of inflates the minutes across the board. Just keep riding with him. Joey Tarpanay, still a solid option. You pay for what you get. You don't have to force him into your team if you have enough middle forwards. But if you need a middle forward, he's probably the safest one there. And then Hosking is still a red hot buy too. So great option there. Not going to play 80 minutes most weeks, but he will play 80 minutes this week, I would expect. So yeah, Hosking, red hot option. Definitely target him. Are we getting any questions on Smithies here?
No, we're not, surprisingly.
Guys, come on. Smithies is the interesting one. Let me get some numbers up here on Smithies. And while I'm doing that, Monty, what do you think of Big Morgan?
Morgan Smithies. I owned him last year, and he had some fun games, but then he had some, low PPM games, but with, the injuries they have and no Hudson Young, I think this is where Smithies can easily get 50 minutes, maybe even more. But Smithies seems like, he's cheap as well. What's he priced at?
He's 477K, so priced at a 35. Historical average and 60 minutes, big sample size here, is 45 points in 59 minutes. So solid little PPM there. If you can get that 60-minute roll, he played 64 minutes last week. That was a bit of an uptick. He scored 70 points, which don't expect that.
Oh, yeah.
But if you needed a mid, I'm a big fan of Morgan Smithies here. I think he could just be one of those guys who plods along and scores you automatic points. And, Mariota, Josh Papali'i, Noah Martin, Noah Paddy, these guys aren't big minute guys on the bench. So I'm a fan of Smithies right now. If it puts you to 5 Raiders, I mean, you have a problem in round 15 when they're all on bye, but I don't think that's a big issue. Round 15 is going to be a problem for everyone. So I still think he's a good buy. He's a big pod there. If I was not an owner of Tavanga already, if people were asking about that, I would go Smithies over Tavanga right now. I just think he has a more solid route to consistent scores, and he's a factor in the non-major buy rounds as well. So Smithies is a fun little pod. There is risk there. The risk is that his minutes drop back, but I think it's unlikely with the injuries they have.
And then we just got a couple questions. Is Hudson Young a hold?
Huddy Young, yeah. He's all right. He's like a tier 4 sell. So if your team's perfect and you can make a move that makes sense, then you can sell him. But he doesn't miss any extra weeks due to Origin. He plays off the bench, so he likely backs up from Origin. I think he's all good. So I'd hold on to him for sure.
And then if you sold Horsburgh a couple of weeks ago, would you look to bring him back in if you needed that mid? Or
no, he's not value. So he only plays, rounds 12 and 18. So he's a hold for sure, but you're paying for what you get. You might as well go. He's not quite a keeper. He's a little bit below a keeper, whereas Tarpanay is just that little bit better where he's a keeper for the full year. So I wouldn't target Horsburgh. I'd either go cheaper or go to the top end.
And then if you had Matt Timoko, would you hold him?
Yeah, you'd hold Timoko. It's a fun pod. He's had some good weeks. So yeah, hold on to Timoko for sure, at least until next week, and then reassess from there. Cool. So now we can throw to trade questions then. So let's just see if anyone's got any big trade questions. So once I'll let you grab a few of those for us.
Alrighty. So Ethan asks, Smithies or Docker Clay?
It depends what your team needs, right? Pure hooker, pure middle forward. Have a look at what your side needs. If you benefit from having a player next week, Smithies is the only one who helps you next week. It really depends on your depth. If you have great depth, then Docker Clay is better value and covers those buy rounds. But I'd probably lean towards. Docker Clay means that you don't have to think about hooker. That's nice, right? So Docker Clay and Aaron Clark is a really nice combo. They're both good. I think it depends on your team, really. I'd probably lean towards Docker Clay only if it's perfect for your team, though. So for certain teams, Docker Clay, but for Smithies for most teams.
Handman asks, Nafahu White, Max King, and Latu Fainu to Turbo, Curran, and Garrick.
I just want to say I'm really sorry that you copped those issues. White injured, and King getting picked for Origin. That wasn't even being talked about. Like he was vaguely referenced once. Yeah, so that's brutal, Handman. But yeah, these are fun trades. I like it. Good options there. You got some big upside out of those guys. So yeah, jump on those trades.
Payne Haas asks, thoughts on Purdue to AFB, Dylan Egan to Hosky, and Toya to Docker Clay. And they are a head-to-head coach.
Purdue to AFB is good. Egan to Hosking is good. Toya to Docker Clay. If you're head-to-head coach, you don't really need Docker Clay that much. I'd probably go somewhere else instead of ZDC over as a head-to-head coach. But yeah, just find another option there instead. And
now Dan's a bit conflicted here. He's an avid Wasp fan. He wants to think with his head, not his heart. If he's kept Metcalf, is it smart to trade him to Katoa this week or wait to bring him in round 15?
That's a tough one. So Warriors playing without, a few of their big enforcers up front. Could be a tougher game for Metcalf. His base stats aren't always the best. Isaiah Katoa is that elite keeper option. I'd make that trade this week if I was you, but it's not a desperate trade. But I would make that trade myself, yeah.
Luca asks, Purdue to Herbie for head-to-head. So buy rounds are off for them.
Yeah, okay. So you cop that round 13 hit. So the issue for you here is that buy rounds are off. So you're not playing this week, and then Herbie has a buy next week. So you'd be buying Herbie. You'd be waiting 2 weeks to use him as a scorer. So for you, I would wait a couple of weeks and then buy him at that point. His price isn't going anywhere. This week doesn't matter to you. Yeah, steer clear. But if your head-to-head was playing this week, then buy Herbie for sure.
Mateo Gaming asks, do I go Egan and White to McInnes and Halasima?
These are fun trades. I'm not the biggest Halasima fan now. Like you've copped a few. He's made a bit of cash there. You've copped a bit of a loss there now. He's already made that money for other people. He also has that risk of Capewell coming back into the back row, stealing some minutes as well. So I'd personally find someone else instead of Halasima.
And then A-Dog asks, Egan, Karaz, and Jay Saifidi, I assume, to Jazz Tavanga, AFB or Kolomatangi, and Teddy.
Such bad luck there again. Karaz and Saifidi. Yeah. That's brutal. So probably not on these trades. I don't think targeting Jazz is a smart move right now. There's a big risk that, Gerbo doesn't make Origin at all, and then Jazz becomes a bit of a dud after this week. So it's too late for Jazz. AFB and Kolomatangi are both good options, and Teddy is a good option too. So I'd find another trade there that doesn't involve Jazz. Maybe Zach Docker Clay instead. And then you just choose between AFB and Kolomatangi. You're just choosing which week do you need players, basically. So it's up to your squad completely.
And Hunter asks, position doesn't matter. Who would you buy, Tedesco or Kai Pearce-Paul?
Ooh, Teddy or KPP? I bought KPP a couple of weeks ago, so that's probably my answer. He's no Origin risk. He's rock solid. I think he'll be good, but if you need a wing fullback, like you say, position doesn't matter, but position does matter. Like have a look at your team and sort of think week to week. Do you need an edge forward or do you need a wing fullback? Are you starting like Jenkins? Are you starting Tamale? In which case, you probably go for Tedesco.
Justin Murphy asks, Watson, Egan, and Toya to Curran, AFB, and Hopoi.
You sell Watson for sure. You sell Egan. You could keep Toya if you wanted to. These are solid buys. The issue with these buys is they're not really keepers. So you're kind of buying. Like AFB is a fringe keeper, not quite a keeper. Maybe he becomes a keeper if last week's ain't go by. But he's not guaranteed to be a keeper. Curran's guaranteed not to be a keeper. And Hot Boy is a good cash out. So I'd try to get more guys because we're a bit low on trades. I'd be trying to get guys who you're certain are going to just keep on pumping for you and you're not going to have to sell. So I'd probably go back to the drawing board and have a look at someone that might be better than Curran or going cheaper than Curran instead. You either want to sort of go top end or a bit lower.
And then Joshua asks, if you have Hines already, would you still go Katoa?
Do you have enough halves next week is the answer to that question. So probably not. Probably not because next week you'd be running, Cleary and Savala, I'm guessing. And Cleary might not back up. There's just a few issues there. So that's a big risk, but they are the top two scoring halves this week. So if you do want to take the gamble, you can. Just have a look at your roster config as well. The answer, by the way, to a lot of these questions is going to be have 13 players this week, and then see how many players you have next week. It really is that. Like the buys are pretty straightforward for this round, and the sells are pretty straightforward. So you just gotta build your roster and count how many players you have, and just figure that out.
Sebastian asks, Dylan Egan, Latrell Mitchell, and Rob Toya to Radley, Garrick, and Kale Iro.
Yeah, I like this quite a bit. So Radley's that bit cheaper, where I actually like him as an option through this period. He's a Palm, obviously, so doesn't play Origin. Garrick and Iro, close enough to keepers that I like them too. And the fixtures are fantastic. So, yeah, this is a good trio of trades. And we'll go 3 more questions there, and then we're going to go jump to buy, hold, sell.
Easy. George asks, thoughts on selling Haas?
If in different years, so last year when we had no cash, like my team is worth more now than it was the end of last year. Right. So we're so flush with cash. I don't need the money. So if I started my team in like round 6 and I missed all the cash cows, and you know what I mean, then I would sell Haas. Right. So if you're a team where you miss the cash cows, maybe you're a first time player, whatever it is, you could sell Haas. It makes sense for you. But if you're a coach who nailed it and you have a bunch of money in the bank and all that sort of thing, I wouldn't be doing it. I just don't think you're going to get enough value out of it. But at the same time, Haas is dealing with a couple of injury issues. He'll play Origin. I think he will drop off during this period. So for certain teams, I'm going to say yes, Haas is like a tier 4 sell.
And then we have another trade, Cobbo, Egan, and Ponga for Herbie, Garrick, and Teddy.
Scorching hot. That is a banging backline you're going to have there. So yes.
Now,
last one.
If you needed an edge for this round, Britton Nickera or Victor Radley?
I go Radley just because of the triple buy round coverage and not missing any of the minors. So they have random. The Roosters miss round 17 and 14 when no one else does. Radley's got dual position too. Yeah. Nikora's the better scorer of the two, but Radley has so many things going for him there.
And then just like to confirm that we only have our starting 13 score for us this round.
Yeah, big time. So it's round, like the major bye rounds, round 12, 15, 18, just before Origin, guys. Those are weeks we have only 13 players. And then after Origin as well. So before and after Origin. Basically, think of it like that, right? Look at when Origin is. Before and after Origin, you only have 13 players. So those minor bye rounds, 2 rounds, 13, 16, 19. So basically everything from now on except for 14 and 17. And then from round 20 onwards, we go back to normal. Yeah, so that's us done and dusted, guys. Teamless Tuesday. Looking pretty good. I'm feeling good this week. I think captains are going to be fun. So have some fun with your captains is my big advice here. Trade for upside. Go, take a shot at some guys. This is the period of the season where you're only playing that 13. So you can do a bit more loopholing. You can afford to be a bit more aggressive, take more risks. And the other thing I'm going to say is if you're fully set, don't force trades you don't need to make. Right. So I think a lot of people are looking for trades when they don't need to make them.
Yep.
If you can hold trades, it might be a good move this week. Just make sure you have that starting 13. Monty, any last words here from you?
Just take a look at what you have and don't fall into the trap of buying players for this round because you may fall short next round. So just take a look at team schedules and you'll be right.
Great advice there from Quickfire NRL Fantasy. And guys, if you want to check out Monty too, Instagram, TikTok, Quickfire NRL Fantasy. He's all over that. All right, cheers, guys. Thanks for jumping on. Hopefully it was an enjoyable one and good luck this week.